How you doing?
I'm great, thanks.
I want to start by saying how much I enjoyed this movie. You did a great job with your debut feature.
Thank you.
How long you've been working as a producer in Hollywood for quite a while?
Yeah.
How long have you known that you wanted to direct a film?
From very early on, I was a producer for a writer-director named Gary Ross, and so I had, I was really intimate as far as the inner workings of his process, and so very early on, I knew I wanted to direct, and I felt suited to that. It was just about picking my spot and my time and finding the right story, and this was it.
Well, you've been on the set of a lot of big movies.
Yeah.
And one of the things I've learned from talking to a lot of filmmakers is that, it's all about shaving time off the day. It's about not taking a crane when you don't need one. It's to find the money to make your story. So what did you take away from working with Gary that you knew you needed to bring to something like this?
Well, I think for especially a lower budget film like this one, and one where we only had 29 days to shoot, it was all about picking my battles, right? So I wanted to shoot the entire movie a certain way, and there was those moments where I had to compromise, get things in one shot instead of 6, knowing that there might be another scene down the line where I need more time.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I'm always curious about the editing room because that's ultimately the final rewrite.
Yeah.
Obviously you only had so much footage with a 29-day shoot, but
Yes.
how did it go in the editing room? Maybe what did you learn from early friends and family screenings that impacted the finished film?
Yeah, I mean, there's one pro to not having a lot of time, right? There's only so many ways you can edit, right? There's only so many ways into each scene if you only have a few shots per scene, right? If you have 30 shots a scene, there's a lot of different ways. So that's one pro. But I also find in the editing room is where you find your tone, right? It's tone of the movie, and that's through music. And cutting pattern and all that stuff. So we had a pretty good first cut. I was really happy with it, and the people who we first invited to see it were really moved by the movie. So I knew I was in good shape early on, and I just had to get it into shape as you do. The longer you go, the better shape you get the movie in.
For a debut film, I'm sure when you got Taraji and then you get Sam, are you like, get the F out of here? Like, this is going to be my first movie and I just got these two great actors?
Right. Well, anytime, as you know, a movie is not really, up until you start shooting, it's not born yet. So I had the script. I knew the script came out well. And when Taraji, she was the first one to sign on. When she signed on, I knew it was going to be a movie. Then I knew, and I felt so fortunate. And Ann Atwater, who had become friends with, was so excited that Taraji was going to be playing her. I mean, she was over the moon about it. I had this couple great voicemails from her. And then you add Sam Rockwell to that, and here I am with what I think is a great script and these two amazing actors. And I'm just in the catbird seat, It's like, wow, these people are going to come to life better than I thought.
Oh, and they're both brilliant.
Yeah.
And both of their performances are amazing.
Yeah.
The thing about making a movie that's based on real life events is that you're trying to be honest to what really happened and to these people, but you're also making a movie.
Sure.
So talk a little bit about balancing that line of fact and fiction.
Yeah, I mean, luckily this is a true story, right? And most of the movie is exactly what happened. So that was good. And so it's just about, and look, sometimes the story is so amazing that you don't need to embellish as much, And so for me, it's just about molding that and taking the journey through these several weeks that, that this story is told over in the film. But to have the book, to have had Ann Atwater talk to me about it for 3 years, Bill Riddick to be able to talk to me about it, CP's family. I had a little documentary to watch to get their tone and their voices and their relationship. It just made it that much easier.
One of the things about Sam is I know he's a perfectionist. He always likes to listen to things, listen to voices.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about working with Sam when he is so focused on getting it right.
Yeah, I mean, Sam is ultra prepared, just as Taraji is. Sam is ultra prepared before he even gets there. So we had met a few times when I was prepping down in Atlanta. He would come down and we'd talk about it. And then his process of staying in that kind of having that reality about the character. Like you said, he listens to CP. He had listened to CP's radio interviews in his earbuds between each setup, And so, but he has that all. He's embodied that, and he's ready for each scene, and very open and giving once the scene starts and once you have to talk about it.
Well, I would imagine it's you did a great job with threading the needle on sort of humanizing a member of the Klan, but it's also like you're always walking near the third rail. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about humanizing sort of, you know, the Klan, if you will, like a member.
Yeah, look, I think when you go into a story like this, especially specifically this one, my first goal was to understand how Ann Atwater was able to get to this guy and change his heart, and Bill Riddick, right? And so from there, I had to figure out where his hate came from. So I had to know about him, and I wanted the audience to know about him, right? Make him three-dimensional. That gives us understanding about where his hate came from. Why was it misguided, right? And that gave Ann Atwater a map, right? How to get through it, and I think maybe a map for all of us.
One of the things about Taraji is she doesn't look like Ann. And I was so impressed with what she did physically, the way she made herself look. Talk a little bit about, were you, when you talked to her about how were you going to portray Ann, and she, you know, she obviously did a transformation, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, look, Ann and I talked about it. As soon as Taraji signed on, it was so perfect because Taraji has what Ann has, right? She has these powerful eyes. She has this powerful voice, right? But she's also vulnerable, and she's a huge heart. Those were the things that mattered to me, right? As far as the costume and her wig and things like that, that was all Taraji. I just let her do it, and she came to set like that, and she had the character fully formed.
I'm always interested, for example, Clint Eastwood likes to shoot the rehearsal, and then, or maybe a take or two, and then he's out.
Yeah.
And Fincher likes to shoot 50, 60 takes.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about what you were able to do on this film, and what is your preference if you could have done more?
Well, so, you know, if you went with me into the editing room, we opened up the dailies, you'd see I only had 3 or 4 takes of everything. That's it. And that was only because of time, right? And if I hadn't had the crew I had, because of my previous relationships as a producer, I had a lot of great people who came and worked for me, worked with me on this as a labor of love. Plus, I had this cast, right? And so everybody was so good at their jobs that I was able to get everything in 2, 3 takes. Yeah, sure, there were shot lists that I had that I threw out half of every day, you know. And sometimes when those problems arise with time, or you see them coming, sometimes there's a better creative solution. There's a few scenes in the movie that we did literally in 1 shot instead of 6 or 7, which I wanted to have. I wanted to use a cutting pattern, but we ended up doing it in 1 camera move. And it maybe came out better than I would have expected.
When you're getting ready to go on set, you haven't started filming yet, what's the scene or scenes that you were like dreading pulling off with your limited time frame?
Well, it's lucky for me because I knew the script structure worked. I knew the scenes worked. I vetted them with myself and the actors, so I was never worried about getting hung up on an acting scene or a performance scene. Plus, I had Sam Rockwell, Taraji Henson, Babou, and Heche. I mean, come on. So the things that I ever got in the weeds were big camera moves with a lot of extras, right? And somebody's out of place. You got hundreds of people need to be in certain places. Those are the only things that ever slowed me down, and which is amazing because that means I know at the crux of my movie, everything else is working.
The gas station plays a big part. There's a few other locations in the film. You're making a period film.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the challenges of finding places that actually worked.
Yeah, so obviously this is for Durham, but we shot in Atlanta. And my good friend Janine Opal, who had done Seabiscuit and Pleasantville as a production designer for me. And she did LA Confidential. I mean, she's a 4-time Academy Award nominee.
I mean, a little talented.
A little bit.
Right.
And we had, you know, very little budget, and she just stepped up for me, and she loved the story, thankfully, but our relationship. And so here's what I knew. I knew she's so precise, and she's a perfectionist. And so I knew that once we chose a location, that once we got back and she had transformed it into the set, it was going to be near perfect. So that was one part of my headspace as a first-time director that I didn't have to worry about. Yeah, once in a while you move a table or a chair when you get there. But Janine is just, her taste and her abilities were what made this movie happen.
One of the things that I think a lot of people don't realize is Tobey Maguire produced this.
Yeah.
He's turned into a prolific producer.
Yes.
And really championing really good scripts.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about how Tobey came to this and what it was like working with him.
Yeah, so Tobey, I've known Tobey since Pleasantville. He was a younger man then, so was I. And then Seabiscuit. So I've been friends with Tobey for a long time. And the one thing I always knew about Tobey is he had amazing taste. So after I was done writing this, and I had just gotten Taraji, or I think it might have been before Taraji signed on, I sent the script to Tobey because I knew he was doing other things. And I said, hey, I need a writing job, before I get this movie made. Well, he called me a week later and had me down there, and we talked, and he said he wanted to produce this movie too. So with his taste, and he liked it, I knew I was in good shape.
What's interesting is that, as I said, he's done a lot of interesting things recently, and Brittany runs a marathon, and anyway,
Which did great at Sundance.
It's an amazing film.
Yeah.
I gotta go. Congratulations on your debut feature. I cannot wait to see what you do next.
Thank you so much.
Seriously, great job.
Thank you, man.